Hey guys, welcome back to Andy's Dinosaur Reviews, and today we have yet another Schleich figure and yet another figure that was requested for review here on the channel. This is their Giganotosaurus, and you might be looking at this and think, well, it doesn't really look very Giganotosaurus-like, and you would probably be correct because the sculpt itself is not exactly accurate. However, it is an older sculpt from Schleich, so again, it's another one of those instances where, you can't really take into consideration accuracy on an outdated sculpt. But that being said, I have always loved this sculpt, and many people don't, but I personally have been such a huge fan of this dinosaur figure ever since it was initially released from Schleich quite a ways back with an alternate paint scheme. I loved that figure. I actually ended up purchasing one and repainting it a long time ago, and I actually still have that repaint. Most times when I repaint figures, I usually end up selling them off, but I've actually kept the repaint of this figure because I was always such a big fan of this sculpt, and I definitely still like it to this day. Not so much as far as like accuracy when it comes to a Giganotosaurus, but it's just a really cool looking, kind of flashy looking sculpt for the dinosaur. I love the bulkiness to the body. I like the positioning of the tail, even though it's not, again, the most realistic way that a tail of a dinosaur could potentially bend. It helps with the balance, so I understand why they have it that way, but I even like that. I don't know what it is that's so appealing to me about this figure, but I've always been a big fan of this particular Schleich release. And we now have, again, the newest paint variant that has been released of this. There are two, I believe, unless they've released like some sort of a special edition one that I missed. I believe this is the second release from Schleich of this particular sculpt in the paint variations, but a really nice looking paint variant of this one, and I actually think I might like this one a little bit better than the older one as far as the paint scheme goes, because I really feel like it is a very nice naturalistic look overall for the dinosaur paint wise. So let's jump straight to a closer look right now. So starting up here at the head sculpt of our figure, you can see some really nice detailing as per usual when it comes to a Schleich figure. The sculpt is very highly detailed. You can see some really nice scale detail throughout, as well as just generally some really nice skin texture to the figure. You can see that the eyes are nicely elaborated with like a darker black around the eyes and also down into the eye socket itself, but the eye itself is painted with a yellow, given a black pupil, and also is nicely glossed. And you can see that primarily the body has like a nice brownish coloration, but you can see a nice dark wash that's been applied to the palate area of the Giganotosaurus so that the scale detail in that area pops quite nicely. And you have a nice maroonish type of a coloration here that runs up over the top of like the eyebrow area and then along the snout here. And you can see it leads down to the nostrils. The nostrils are highlighted with a black, and they sport a really cool gloss coat in there, which is something that many times I think companies fail to utilize, but it also adds another element of realism to the figures that I really quite like. You do have an articulated jaw, as per usual, when it comes to a theropod from Schleich. You can see the teeth are all sculpted kind of together up here on the upper jaw, but they do separate on certain areas. The teeth on the lower jaw seem to be more sculpted individually, whereas again the teeth on the upper side are sculpted a little bit closer together, but not exactly together. Like you can definitely see that some are sculpted individually, some are not. But you can see that we are given a very nicely detailed inside of the mouth, especially right there in the skin flap, as well as that beautiful looking tongue. The tongue is very, very nicely textured, and it's beautifully painted with some variations of like maroons, actually similar to what you see up there on the head. And it definitely has been given a nice wash, so all of the textured appearance there to the tongue pops beautifully. So I really, really love that. And it's also been given a very nice gloss coat there on the inside of the mouth, sporting yet another level of realism to the figure. Really love the inside of the mouth right there. And the jaw itself articulates beautifully like you usually find when it comes to a Schleich figure. Then starting up here on the top of the snout, we start to have some ridges, almost Jurassic World Dominion-like, and you can see those ridges pick up in size as you reach the top of the head, but then they start to taper off again to a little bit of a smaller size, not drastically smaller, but they definitely do decrease in size. But I think the addition of those ridges up there on the head give a nice element of flashiness to the body here, to the sculpt. You can see a dark black that kind of follows along with those ridges. We do have a little bit of like paint chips here on the top of mine, but you can see that black then runs down here into the side of the face, and then we transition to a nice brown coloration, but that black continues to run along the back here of the spinal column, following those ridges down the course of the figure. You can see some nice creasing here in the neck region of the Giganotosaurus as its head is turned to the right, as well as some more creasing up here, but also just generally some really nice structure and kind of tensing to the neck right there, as well as some nice looking skin texture to the figure. As you move down here into the arms, you can pick up on some muscle definition, as well as kind of the shoulder blade a little bit right there. You have the fingers that are all kind of sculpted together, and they're painted here as far as the nails go with a black coloration. They look okay, not the best, but they're not bad either. And you can also see that we have some really nice skin texture here to the stomach region, as well as lots of wrinkles and creasing here down here in the lower part of the stomach. As we lead back up here, you can see that this nice black coloration like runs down and kind of stripes and designs down into the body, but it's kind of like highlighted with almost a off-white, sort of like bordering on a peach type of a color. Like, it's a very strange variation of color, but I really like that they've kind of outlined those areas with that color, because I think it's very appealing to the eye, and it's surprisingly nicely applied. Like, something like that I would expect to look more like paint on a figure, but Schleich has applied that beautifully here as far as that paintwork goes, and I'm definitely quite happy with the final appearance of this paintwork up here. And I love how this kind of like light brown creeps through some of the blacks and stuff here on the back. Definitely looks really neat there as well. You can see that up there near the ridges, it is littered with kind of osteoderms and stuff running along that ridge line as well. As you lead down into the thigh is extraordinarily muscular, like you would expect to find on a dinosaur like this. Really nice skin texture. As we move down the course of the leg, you can see the kneecap is present. Nice calf muscle as well. Leading down into the foot. The foot has some of the largest scoots I think I've ever seen. In fact, the entire front top of the foot is nothing but very large looking scoots down the course of the toes, and you have nails painted yet again with a black. We do have dew claws, as you can see as that foot over there is picking up off of the ground. And then leading back up here, you can see that we start out with a few creases as we lead into the tail. We have more of that kind of black striping down and designing, but that tapers off as well and transitions back to just this black that runs along the ridges there on the back. And we have a very strong curve for the tail, and the dinosaur is actually kind of leaning on the tail to help it balance. So that is the reason for that drastic curve, and something about that, I don't know what it is, but I just like that. And I love the thickness of the tail as well. Very cool looking. You can see that the head sculpt on this side looks pretty much just like we had seen on the previous side. We have that nice gloss coat added to the nostrils, very nicely painted eye, and some really smooth paint application as far as like the transitions and stuff back and forth. Leading back into the neck, you don't really see so much going on as far as creasing over here. You see more stretching of the skin because of course the Giganotosaurus has its head turned to the right. You can see some decent detail here in the throat region. As we lead back here, getting closer to the body, you can continue to see like tensing in the neck and stuff right there. The arm sculpt here is held into the body again, similarly to what we see over here, so in a fairly natural looking way. You can see that we again have some really nice detailing here in the stomach region, and with the leg pushing into the stomach right here as it's taking that step forward, you can see some pretty significant girth to the stomach region of the Giganotosaurus, furthering that look of this being a very thick and large and intimidating dinosaur. And I actually really like the thickness of the body on this one. Definitely very appealing as far as I'm concerned. You can see that they've also kind of like shaded a few different areas, highlighted some areas with some really nice darker but very subtle paint application. Some nice creasing right here again as this leg is pushing into the body. You can really pick up on the muscle definition throughout as that leg is, kind of folding together, showing off the musculature of that leg. And then moving down here into the foot, we have those very large scoots again down the course of the foot there. But I love the positioning of this foot as it's lifting up off of the ground. Really nice, very bird-like. Just absolutely love the positioning of that foot. I should have taken these tags off before I did this review, but you can definitely see that foot sculpt lifting up off of the ground looks really nice and natural. And then leading back over here, you could see some nice creasing and stuff to the skin back here behind the thigh. Beautiful detailing down here, and we lead out into that really strong curve again for the tail. of the Giganotosaurus. So really cool looking, beautiful detailing here on the underside. The only thing I think that this figure is really missing is that kind of trademark Schleich dark wash. We do have it up here in the palette, but some other areas like the detailing here on the underside I think could have looked pretty good with it, but it is missing that dark wash to it. But even with the dark wash being non-existent, it's still a really cool looking repaint of their older Giganotosaurus. As far as a size goes, this Giganotosaurus definitely has some pretty impressive size to it. For a length, you're looking at about the 9 3/4 inch range, or about 25 centimeters. And then for a height to the top of the head, you're looking at right around the 6.5 inch range, or about 16.5 centimeters. For a size comparison, here is Robert Muldoon, who is just kind of lazily leaning on the Giganotosaurus. We also have the Attack Pack Colovosaurus, as well as the Schleich Tyrannosaurus Rex, kind of giving us a preview, actually, of Jurassic World Dominion, with these two figures kind of facing off, as these are two of the dinosaurs that face off in that film. But you can definitely see again that the Giganotosaurus sports a very impressive size, even larger than the Tyrannosaurus from Schleich. So showing off the fact that, you know, the figure definitely sports a pretty big, impressive size for a Schleich figure, even though they do sometimes at times have some very impressively sized figures. Even the height and everything is really quite large on this figure. So this second variant of the Schleich Giganotosaurus is really quite fun, and what I do like about this figure is actually there was another sculpt prior to this that had a similar look, kind of with like the ridges running along the back of the head and neck and everything, and they've kept this one kind of in a similar look to the older one, but at the same time with sort of a newer, updated look. So I like that aspect of the figures. I like that they look like they belong to the same group. And at the same time, this one had, you know, when it was released, initially had a bit of a more updated look. Of course, again, this figure, the sculpt, has been out for quite a long time, so it's a little bit outdated at this point, although I think when it was released, it wasn't necessarily the most accurate interpretation of a Giganotosaurus then either. But that's something that you do often find from the Schleich brand, is they kind of create, at times, more stylized versions of their figures. They are obviously meant for kids, so they're meant to appeal to children, and I feel like the flashiness of this Giganotosaurus is something that would definitely appeal to kids. But what's good is, even though they create their figures, you know, for children, adult collectors like myself, and obviously a lot of you guys watching, can still appreciate the figures and love and enjoy them like I always have, because of the fact that they always give us a really highly detailed sculpt and a really nice paint job, and that's definitely what you get with this Giganotosaurus. I'm a huge fan of this sculpt. I always have been, and again, it's just one of those figures. You ever just have one of those figures that even though you know it's inaccurate, even though you know it's not the best version of that species out there, it just really is appealing to you, and that is this one here. It's just one of those figures that I've always had a big weakness for, and I honestly can't even figure out why. I just love the sculpt of this Giganotosaurus. And this newest paint scheme that they've given it, I really do quite like as well. I love the kind of black coloration running along the back, the highlighting of the ridges running along the spinal column with that blackish coloration, and that kind of flashiness with that off-white that runs down and circles around and designs around the black. I also love that subtle area of that maroonish type of a color up there on the head. The inside of the mouth is just beautiful as far as the paintwork goes in there. They've just done a really good job of giving it kind of a flashy looking paint scheme, but again in a nice natural way. So if you are interested in this, I will include a link in the description to where you can purchase this on the Schleich website. So make sure you check the link in the description, head on over there and purchase yourself this really cool Giganotosaurus from Schleich, and make sure you like, comment, and subscribe before you do, and I will see you in the next review. Thanks for watching.